real quickly, I wanted to share a story with you. I was a couple of weeks ago, I was working on a file that I've been building for the last 30 years. Whenever I read a book, I outline the book and I create an index for myself in the back of the book. And then I take that index and I type it into a Word file, single spaced, and then Word will allow you to put it in alphabetical order. So I do that. And I've been doing it for years and years and years. Well, the file is now 350 pages long. And what I do is I'm able to go in and let's say I want to, let's say I want to get a certain quote. Well, if I type in whatever I'm searching for, like joy or uh, responsibility or any word I choose, it will show me all the places where that quote has been used, and I can go and dig in my library and find books and find quotes. Makes it really helpful when doing writing. And like I said, I have hundreds of books in this system and 300 pages, 350 pages of work. Well, the other day I went and I opened it up and it was all in Greek. And I couldn't believe it. Here's 30 years of work and I'm looking at it and it's all in Greek, alpha, beta, gamma, delta, epsilon, it's all written in Greek. And I tried to figure out how did it become Greek and how do I get it back to English? I had no idea. So um, I tried closing it and opening it up again. Maybe it would just magically appear in English. No, it came back in Greek. So I went online and I listened to several different people, and then I selected everything in the text, did a select all, and then changed the font, and it all popped back into English. It was so weird, so weird. So we are all going to run into problems in Word. We are all going to have to figure out and solve problems here and there. And you never know what the problem is going to be. Even those of us that have used Word for many, many years, we still run into things that we have to figure out and look to the internet to see if there's any good solutions for us. So that is my introduction. And now I'm going to introduce Jenny Margotta, who needs no introduction. We all are very familiar with Jenny and her wisdom and her knowledge and her expertise. And just like the rest of us, I am very excited about this. I think this is one of the most practical sessions that we've had in a long time. And I think we're all going to benefit greatly from it. So Jenny, I'm not going to take up any more time. I'm sending it over to you. So the rest of us, let us all mute ourselves so that there's no background interference. And Jenny's going to share her screen and get us started.
Okay, tell me when I can. All right. There is so much to know about Word that I can only just touch on the basics very, very, very quickly. Unless it's a question that just absolutely has to be asked in the middle of what I'm presenting, just really quickly jot down your questions. We're going to allow time at the end of the class for specific questions and answers. If there is any interest, I can offer another class down the road that's somewhat more of a master's class that gets into a lot of things that basic users of Word don't need to know. The easiest way to learn Word, if you don't just want to click on buttons and see what happens, is you can always go out to the internet and say, can I do XYZ, or how do I do XYZ? But in order to do that, you need to know what version of Word you're using. If you don't already know what version you're using, you go up to File, you come down to Account, and you'll see it says About Word. Click on About Word, and you'll see it'll tell you, I'm using Microsoft 365. It'll tell you you're using Word 2010, 2017, whatever. And the reason you pretty much need to know what version of Word you're using is because, as so many people like to do, if it ain't broke, they still fix it, which means they change maybe where they put something or the particular wording of something. Most of the wording is enough that, like, if I tell you how to do it in 365, you can probably figure it out in some of the older versions. But some of them they've changed. So if you are not really sure, just ask it. How do I justify text in Word 2010 or whatever? And there's videos, there's instruction. I mean, it's just all out there. So that's the very thing. Now, across the top, the file tab obviously gives you save and save as. Save and save as are exactly the same thing the first time around. After you've saved it the first time, you click on save as if you want to save it as a different file name. One of the things that I do when I'm working on a book is I put the date that I'm working on it in the name of the file. And that's really important if you're writing and you want to save different versions of things. Get used to putting the date in the file name itself. That way you always know what the latest file is, and you can go back and you'll say, well, I rewrote that about let me go back to an old edition and see what I said the last time. Those kinds of things. You'll notice, like here, every one of these, well, the teaching basics doesn't, but the rest of them, you'll notice they all have a date on them so that I know what date that I last worked on a particular project. So when you want to change the name and update that date, then you do a save as, and obviously then print and export, all that kind of happy stuff. And to get out of any of that, you just hit your escape key. The home tab is one of the most used ones that you're going to find. You'll find pasting, you'll find bold, this is bold, this is italics, this is underline, this is strike through. Strike through is easy if you're manually saying, well, I think I'm going to take this out, but I'm not sure. You highlight something and you hit your strike through key, and you'll notice it puts a line through it. So you'll know that you're thinking about taking those particular words out. These are all toggle on and toggle off. You just click them on and off. The next one is if you're putting numbers in, like if you're doing chemical stuff and you have CO2, and the 2 is always a subscript. That's the 2 down there. Or if, sometimes like if, to the 3rd power, then it's a superscript. We're not going to get into all of the text effects and stuff. That's more of a master thing. The next one is highlighting. You'll notice that I've highlighted this, and if you want to come back and look at something, I'm not sure if I like the way I wrote that. Let me come back to it. You can highlight it. You can change different colors if you want. The next one, of course, is you change text, the color of the text. You'll notice I've got blue. If I decided for whatever reason I was designing something, I can change it to green or whatever color I want it. One of the things we'll do in the master class is I've got everything set up as keyboard shortcuts. Now I just did an Alt-U, which you'll see change that back into blue. One of the things that I like about Word, if you get to be a power user, you can set up all kinds of customized shortcuts that really help you through things quickly. The next thing that's really, really important are your justify keys. And I get so many people that try to, use their space bar to, well, I want that over, to line up with that. Well, no, not necessarily. So you can do the first one you'll see. Now, if you'll notice, I highlight this first one, you'll notice the lines all line up on the left. That just gives you everything's left justified. I can center those lines. I can make them all right justified, or the standard book justification is full justified, which means you'll see it spreads the lines out on both so that they're equal margins on both sides. A lot of people don't say, well, I don't like to use that because I get really weird spacing. If you get a super, super weird spacing, the easiest way to resolve that issue is to rewrite the sentence to eliminate that weird spacing, because you don't want to use hyphens. The rule these days is that you don't hyphenate text anymore, mostly because most people don't know how to do it and they do it wrong. And also, if you put manual hyphens in and then you change your page size, then you just really get screwy. You've got bullets that you can put in. That's the one up there, and you can change your different bullet libraries by different things. You can number things automatically with different kinds of numbers if you're outlining things. And you can have different lists. You can change your indents. You can sort things. If you've got a list of things, you can, in a table, you can sort them alphabetically. One of the really, really cool tools that a lot of people don't know about that's super nice to use, this backwards P, that's actually a paragraph sign if you're into editing, but it shows you hidden characters. And you'll notice that with all of these backwards P's indicate that I did a hard return at that point. If you look down at this paragraph, you'll see there's a little dot between each of the words. That shows you that there's only one space between those words. If you see over here, you've got a little arrow. That means that you used your indent key to get to there. One of the things a lot of people often do is they love to put two spaces after a period. Those of us who learned on an old typewriter will put two spaces a lot of times. Even I still do it sometimes after a period. So those are really nice. Down here, it'll show you, if you see all of these spaces, that shows you that instead of using a tab, I used my space bar, and we'll get into that later. It's really not a good idea to use your space bar, because let's say that you want to have all your first paragraphs tab, half an inch, and you figure out that that's 10 spaces. It's really easy to count 8 or 11 or 9 or whatever. So we'll get into how you set your tabs later, but when you see multiple spaces like that, it shows you that you've used your space bar as opposed to using your tab keys. So these are really, turning your paragraphs hidden reveal codes on is really cool when it's just not lining up and I can't figure out why. This will help you figure those things out. We're not going to get into styles. This next section deals with styles, and that's definitely a master class. I use it all the time. Basic users do not need to know how to do that. One of the good things is that, like Mike was talking about, the find and replace. Find just allows you to find something. If you click on the replace key, and I use this all the time, let's say that I'm working on something and people have used, sometimes they've got two spaces between sentences, sometimes they don't. I want to find two spaces. Now the spaces don't show up, you just know that you typed them. And then you hit one space and you can say replace all, and it'll find every place, and you'll see we made 22 replacements. If you are writing a story and you call your character Joe and you decide you want him to be Pete, do a find and replace. You can find every place that you type Joe and exchange it for Pete, and you're good to go. So the find and replace is really, really easy. The next one is the editor, and Word 365 especially has a really cool editor, and it'll show you your spelling, your grammar, your clarity. You just go through them and you look at your editor score. If you're editing your own stuff, you want an editor score as close to 100% as you can get it. You don't always get 100% because Word still doesn't always agree with creative writing. It's a little restrictive. And we're not going to get into text effects because there again, that's kind of a master thing. The insert has got all kinds of stuff, but the most often that you would use for your insert would be, you can insert a table if you're doing statistics, if you want to have a list of things. and then you can create your table however you want it. You can choose how many rows, how many columns, all those kinds of things. Insert pictures, stock images online from this device. The shapes allow you to draw arrows and insert all kinds of different shapes. It's pretty self-explanatory. Headers and footers, we'll get into that a little bit later. I'll show you, but the headers, of course, is the stuff that goes at the top in the margin. Footers is stuff that goes in the bottom. The page number is important because it allows you to tell where you want the page number to be. And it's usually either at the top or at the bottom. Very, very seldom in standard publishing that you would ever put it on the side. But then you do the format page numbers and you get to tell it where you want it to start. If you want it to start at 1, you want it to start at 10, for whatever reason, those kinds of things. We're not going to deal with the text box and those kinds of stuff. The symbols are important because if you're doing things, if you got a little bit of French, a little bit of Spanish, you want to make sure you get the accents where they need to be. This will allow you to do that. If it's not right, these are the last ones that you've used and the most common. If you click on more symbols, you'll come up, you'll see, and it'll take you through all kinds of stuff. And you insert all of those. Or the special characters tab gives you your copyright, your registration, your trademark. If you don't know the shortcut keys for the EM dash and the EN dashes or the non-breaking spaces, it puts those all there. So that's where you get all that kind of stuff. You choose what you want. Let's say I want to put the copyright in, and then you just click on insert and you're good to go. So that's primarily what the basic users are going to use on the insert tab. On the design tab, we'll pretty much not get into that today, unless for some strange instance you needed to put a watermark in. You can see there's different watermarks that you can choose. A watermark is very, very, very low resolution or low opacity behind your text that shows that it's restricted usage of whatever you want to put in there. Page color. I did a book for Lorelei, a children's book, and she wanted her pages themselves to be like turquoise, and so you can choose the actual color of the page itself, and you can get into borders. You have to be very, very careful if you want to get into borders, because once you get them in there, it can be very difficult to take them out. So unless you know what you're doing, don't play with the borders. The layout tab is really important. I use it probably more than anything else. This is where you put in your indents. If you want everything, particularly poets, I get a lot of poets who say, I want to start everything a ½ inch in. And I'll say, well, here's the left margin. No, I want it to be a ½ inch in from the margin. So that's where you would set that you would highlight this whole paragraph and you would just say where I wanted it to be. Quotes, if you're writing letters, if you've got a long quote that's more than 100 words, if the standard for that is to have it indented on both sides. So let's say that this paragraph I'm playing with is a quote from somebody. I would do however much I wanted it on that side. Let's say I wanted it to be, for whatever reason, 1 inch. Well, you'd also want it to be 1 inch on this side. Always pretty much when you're doing quotes, letters, those kinds of things, it's the same indent on both sides. So that's how you do that. One of the things that Word loves to do is default and put a space between paragraphs. In a book, you do not do block paragraphing. You do not do spacing between paragraphs. You'll notice these two paragraphs, one follows the other. The first paragraph in any chapter or section is always left justified. The rest of the paragraphs in that section are indented. Word loves to put spaces between them. If you've got spacing between your paragraphs, go to your indent key and look to see make sure that your before and your after boxes are both 0, unless for some special reason you want it in there. Now there again, let's say that this is a letter and I want it to be, and it's in the middle of a story, and I want, a half of a line at the top and the bottom to offset it. Then I can do, and it goes in 6s. If you want it to be less than that, you can type a number in there. It goes 6, 12, 18. It goes in increments of 6, but you can just highlight it and type whatever number you want in there. Same thing at the after means it'll be at the bottom. So those, I use that a lot when I'm formatting stuff. Those are really important. Do not, if you're, particularly for the poets, do not, let's say that this next section is a poem and you want this one to be here and you want this one to be farther in and smaller. Do not change that for every single one of them. It really is very difficult to do. I worked on a book where the poet, these if you see where I am, the little arrows up there, they manually drag things. I worked on a book once where the poet manually set every single line with those lines. But when I did the book, and the poet did it on 8.5 by 11 paper, but the book was printed in 6 by 9. So it try not to do it that way. Use your justify keys, use your tabbing, use other ways of doing that. Try not to manually set every single line. It's when you're submitting it to, if you're doing it for your own stuff, that's fine. But if you're submitting it to a contest, if you're submitting it for a book, somebody else is going to be working on it, and you do that kind of manual stuff, it's going to drive your editor insane. To the point where I have had some editors, some people, sources have told me that their submission has been rejected because they were told that they used all of the manual formatting, and the editor said it's too much trouble for me to work with. I can't deal with it, and they rejected the submission, regardless of whether the content was any good or not. So be very careful about that. The next one is references. The only thing that you might get into as a new user is your table of contents. Let's say that this is the beginning of a chapter, and I want to set it up as level 1 for my table of contents. And then this next one is going to be my table of contents. It's level 2, those kinds of things. And then you can choose what kind of a table of contents you want. Fiction doesn't generally have a table of contents in a book. A lot of poetry does. So poets are probably more likely to want to use the table of contents than someone writing a novel. For the most part, fiction very seldom has a table of contents in a print book. Now, if you're looking at ebooks, the table of contents, a hyperlink table of contents, is mandatory. So there again, you need to know that. If you get into technical stuff, this is where you do either your footnotes or endnotes. The difference between a footnote and an endnote is a footnote comes at the bottom of the page, and an endnote comes at the bottom of a chapter, or a lot of times at the very end of the book. You can insert citations, you can insert captions, this is if you're setting up an index. The very first time I was asked to index a book, I did it manually. It was 750 pages. I had I don't know, thousands of entries, and I was doing it all manually. And of course, every time I changed page numbers, I had to redo every single page number manually. Here you just say, let's say that every time I use the word footers, I want to put it in my indexing at the end of the book. So you highlight it, you do mark entry, it comes up, and there's your main entry. It's on the current page. I can decide whether I want it to be bold or italics, and I can say mark, and it'll just do one, or I can say mark all, and it'll mark every single time the word footer is used in the entire document. So that's for more nonfiction type stuff. You don't often see anybody indexing poetry or novels, but nonfiction stuff generally does. Mailings, quite honestly, I don't get into mailings at all. That's something I just don't deal with. You can do mail merges to do envelopes and labels and all those kinds of stuff. And that's a part of Word I have to admit that I don't know. The review is important. That's where you get into your editor, your thesaurus. You can do your word count. Read aloud. I recommend that everybody who has the option to do a read aloud, use this feature to read their book, because you will be absolutely astounded at what it finds that you missed when you looked at it on your own. You can have a translate, you can change languages. We're not going to talk about the tracking the track changes and the accept and reject. That's for a master class. The most important thing about view is pretty much I always leave it in print layout. That's the easiest to read, but there are different views. If you change the view, and you want to get out of that, you just hit your escape key. The big thing that I use on this a lot is I can do a page width, or I can do multiple pages. If you're looking at your book in multiple pages and you want to see how it lays out in how the book is going to be printed, you have to keep in mind that books, of course, always start on the right side of the book. Word doesn't allow you to start over there. You have to either manually force it and then take that. I can manually force it to start over there. And you'll notice now what was page 2 is now down here. Or you just kind of sort of mentally, I've done it so much now that I just know that what's over here. Now see, this is the advantage of the reveal codes, because there's my section break. So I just take my section break out. So what's over here is going to be over there. What's here is going to be down on the left on the next side down. So you just kind of have to get used to that. And you can, if you go to multiple pages, you can change different, the smaller you make your little thing at the bottom. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. My Zoom is overlaying my my words, but there's a little guide down here at the bottom. Let's see if I can get to it. If you see this little thing here, the smaller you make this, if you go to multiple pages, you should get, oh, well, I've only got 2 pages, so it's only doing 2, but you'll notice it's getting smaller and smaller. So if I had 40 pages, you could get 4 or 5 or 6 or however many across that you wanted. Or you just drag it up and just keep going. You can always change the size of your screen. So that's pretty much the, sorry about that. I'm getting, like I said, my Zoom stuff is hiding my screen. Okay, so those are the basic tabs. Now we're going to look at adding the icons. We haven't talked about, if you'll see, a lot of what we went over on these various tabs is repeated in this line below all of the tab stuff. And that's called your quick access toolbar. If you know that you're using something a lot, like say your font box or the size or the color, you can add it, and you just right mouse click, you go up to whatever wherever your tab is, right mouse click on what you want to add and say add to your quick access toolbar. Now, unfortunately, it puts it all on the far right. We don't have the option of dragging and dropping and organizing it the way we want, but at least it's there, rather than having to go back and forth to all of your different tabs and stuff. So that's a nice feature. The home tab, we talked about the justification, and we talked about the reveal codes icon. The layout tab, we talked about these margins, all that kind of stuff. One of the important things, particularly for the poets, not so much again for the prose people, but poets particularly, if you go over here to your margins and you see, anytime you see a little arrow or a little triangle below, that means that there's more underneath that. So if you click on margins and you come down to custom margins, you will see, you'll get this pop-up box. The standard that I use, and pretty much the industry standard for margins, is 1/2 inch all the way around. But what most people forget is the gutter. And poets love to push that line to the right, and they forget about the gutter. The standard gutter is 0.3 inches. So that made your line that much smaller. When you do that, you want to make sure that you click on mirror margin. That means that the pages on the left, your margin will be on the right. Your pages on the right, your margin will be on the left, which gives you your book format. So that's really important, mirror margins. And you want to make sure that it says whole document. Now you want to do the paper size. The default in Word is 8.5 by 11, and that's just fine for most people, except almost all of the books are printed at something other than 8.5 by 11 format. It's really important if you know what size your book is going to be. Again, more so for poets, but also for if you want to know where your chapters are ending. You don't, if you're writing a book, you don't want a page to end with just 1 or 2 lines on it. And if you know what your margins are and you know what your paper size is, you'll be able to find where those are. And you can either add stuff so you got more than 3 lines, 2 lines on at the end of a page, and you never want just 1 line by itself on a page. Or you can take words out, change wording so that you eliminate that little orphan on that last page by itself. So setting your page size is really important too. There again, most books these days are printed 6 by 9, not always, but most of them are. And you just type in whatever you want, or you can use your little up and down arrows, either way. And again, you want it to be for your whole document. The layout, this is important too. When we're talking about books, the standard, and I do everything according to industry standard. The standard is that the page number for each first page of each chapter is centered at the bottom of the page. The odd numbered pages, which are on the right, the page number is at the top, justified on the right. The even numbered pages, the page number is at the top, justified on the left. So you want to make sure that you have your different odd and even and first page boxes checked. And you want your section, you always want your section to start on a new page. We're going to get to section breaks here in a minute because those are important too. And there again, the whole document. So that's how you restructure those kinds of things. You can also make your vertical alignment top or bottom. The default's top, and I pretty much just leave it there. And you click on OK. And that reset, if you probably didn't notice, but now I went from an 8.5 by 11 with like 7 inches of margin to only about like 6 inches of margin. So let's go back down here. My pages are much smaller now. Go back to page width. So those kinds of things are really important. The other thing about on the layout tab that is important to know is how to use your breaks. If you'll notice that I said the first page of every chapter, the page number, and you never have a header on the first page of every chapter. So you want to make sure that Word knows that you've gone to an entirely new section. Otherwise, you can't change those headers and footers. So if you just want to make sure that a page within a particular section always breaks to the next page, you use a page break. The beauty of doing that is if you add text or you delete text above that page break will stay there and it will always go to the next page, regardless of how much or how little is on the previous pages. But if you're doing with chapters and you want to go to the next chapter, and remember your page numbers and your headers and footers change, you have to come down here and use a section break, because a page break doesn't allow you to have different headers and footers. A section break does. You pretty much always want it to be next page. Every once in a while it gets kind of screwy, so you can set it for an even page or an odd page. But the section breaks, the most important reason to use a section break is that it allows you to change your headers and footers. In an anthology for each submission, I put the title of the submission and the author's work. So I have to make sure that each of those sections are in there. Otherwise, I can't say this is Diana's, and now we've moved to Richard's, and now we've moved to Mike's. So this is really important to know the difference between a page break and a section break. Those are the biggest things on those. We talked about the left and right indenting with the before and after. We talked about the indents and the spacing. One of the things that's also important is you want to know about line breaks. If you turn on your widow and orphan control, that means that it won't allow just one or two lines of a paragraph to be on the next page, and it'll force the entire paragraph down. When I'm doing a continual running text in the book, I always turn off widows and orphans. You can manually force that, and it's much easier than letting Word decide where you want those things to break. And I always click on don't hyphenate, because there again, like I said, the industry standard is to fully justify and not hyphenate anything anymore. The other thing that's important is this tabs key. Remember I talked about I go nuts when people use a space bar? Well, here's where you set your tabs. The default is a half an inch, but industry standards these days, of course, they have to change things, is either 0.3 or 0.35 for your indent. Some of them are as small as a quarter of an inch. I particularly like 0.35. It's kind of a nice compromise between a quarter of an inch and a half an inch. So let's say that I wanted to set that. I would just do 0.35, and I want it to be a left justified. That means that it'll tab it over to the left. No leaders at all, and just click on set. And you can keep going. You can say, okay, I want the next one. The next one, of course, would be 0.7, and you can just keep setting them. If you're getting into numbers, you can sometimes you want your tab to center, or you can right justify it. The decimal, if you set a decimal tab, that'll make your decimal point in a column of numbers always line up, regardless of whether you got tens or hundreds or thousands or whatever. Tables of contents, if you're doing those kinds of things, you can set different leaders. So you just play with that. Most people are just going to need to know how to do that first basic tab right there. We talked about that. And like I said, we've got, if there's enough interest and enough people want to, I can teach a master's class, which will get into styles. Styles are really fun to use, particularly when you're working on a whole book and you want to make sure that every chapter heading is so many spaces down from the top of your page, and it's this font and this size, and fancy stuff all the way through. When you get used to using styles, all you have to do is set those styles, and you just highlight whatever text it is and click on the style button, and it automatically remembers everything. So you don't have to make hand notes about all that kind of stuff. The other thing in the master's class would be track changes. Particularly for those of you who love to do more than one edit, if you get used to doing you can, or I should say one draft, if you use track changes and you turn it on for yourself, you can put it into just the markup view, and it'll show you what you're taking out and what you're adding. Or you can go to kind of a final view, and it'll look like you've absolutely changed everything. And 3 days later, you think, oh, I really wished I'd have kept that first draft. I don't like this one at all. You just go to show all markup, go back and find that section, and you just take out the stuff that you deleted, you add it back in, and take out the stuff you added, and you've got your original draft back. So it's really, really cool when you get into those kinds of things. But there again, that's more of a master's class, because it's a little bit technical to know how to set all that kind of stuff up. So I can always teach that if I need to. I think that's pretty much it as far as I think everybody knows how to change fonts real quick. I don't like that particular font. You just go up, you can either click on it, and one of the nice things about Word is it kind of gives you an idea of what each of these fonts look for. I give you a warning, there are thousands of fonts out there in the world. You can download and install all of them. However, Not all of them are free for commercial use. In fact, depending on the version of Word you're using, even if a font comes pre-installed in your Word, it may not be free for commercial use. You have to have one of Word's 3 professional versions of the software in order for every font that comes with it to be free. Otherwise, it may or may not be. The easiest way, if you're playing with fonts, is to just go back out to the internet and say, let's say I wanted to use Royster. I happen to know this one is not free, but you go out and you just go back out to your internet and you say, is Royster font free for commercial use? And it'll come back and say yes or no. And if it's not, then you can say, show me free fonts that are similar to Royster font, or you can just, whatever you want, or change a different one. And I mention that because one of the things with all the robots and AI and everything these days, they're starting to crack down on people that are using fonts that they don't have a license to use. So do be careful if you start playing with fancy fonts, do be careful and make sure that you're using something that's paid for. This particular author bought this font, so she has the right to use it. But I can't turn around and use it in a book that I'm writing because I didn't buy the license. So that's kind of where we are. I know that's very, very quick. I skipped over a lot of things, but I wanted to make sure we left time for questions if anybody has questions. So now you can all unmute yourselves and tell me what I missed that you might like to know.
Jenny?
Yes.
Jenny, after I have been typing so many years, one of the things I just naturally do, like you said you do, is I space twice after a sentence. So should I re-educate myself?
Yes, you should. Even every source now, I think I mentioned this in one of my Inkslinger articles, every source now says that nowhere in a document, poets are accepted, they have their own writing style. We're talking prose here. You never have two consecutive spaces anywhere in a book anymore. We also were told that you had 2 spaces after a colon. Not anymore. But one of the things that, like I said, if you get in the habit of putting 2 spaces after everything, and you're doing that, you can go back and try to find every one of them and manually delete them. But if you go up to your, one of the built-in keyboard shortcuts is Alt-EF, which gives you your find and replace. If you go to your replace tab and you type just 2 spaces, you just have to know you did it, because like I said, you can't really see it. And then you come down here and you just hit 1 space. If you do replace all, you'll see it says all done. We made 13 replacements. So it will actually take out all of those 2 spaces for you in a document.
Okay.
But yes, if you are, starting from scratch and you need to re-educate yourself that there is only 1 space after a period. There's only 1 space after a colon. There is a space between each, there's a space before and after an ellipsis and a space between each dot. And there is no space before or after an EM dash, but there is a space before and after an EM dash. So you kind of have to know where the spaces go, but never 2. Never 2 spaces, never 2 consecutive spaces.
I have a question.
Yes.
I don't know if you've run into this or not, but when I'm in that search and replace window, sometimes I'll start typing and then I realize that it has jumped from that window into the text, and I'm typing in the middle of the text. And now it's caused me to not be able to take my eyes off the window to make sure it hasn't done that, because then I have to search for something I don't even know what it is in the text. So have you run across that where it just jumped?
I have. and it's really important that you learn the keyboard shortcut Control Z, as in zebra. Control Z undoes what was just done.
Right, okay,
Or you've got, if you look up here in my quick access toolbar, I've got a backwards circling arrow and a forward circling arrow. That's backward one undoes what was just done.
you know if that's been addressed from, Microsoft has addressed that at all, or not?
I don't know. And I get that every once in a while that it just jumps around.
Yeah,
There are still bugs in Word. Absolutely.
I have also used Control Z, especially when you're doing emails, because sometimes my computer will automatically, it'll just select a whole section of my email, and then the next time I hit a character, it deletes it. And suddenly it's gone, and I want it back. If you push Control Z, it'll bring it back.
Control Z undoes, yeah. If you highlight something and you do Control C for copy, then you could I've got this and I'll do a Control C. I'll come down here and I'll do a Control V like Victor. You'll notice it put it down there. It copied what I had highlighted. If I do a Control Z, it goes away. You can do Control B, obviously, is bold and unbold. Control I is italics. Control U is underlined. There again, these are just toggles. It's on and off, back and forth. One of the things that we didn't hit that's kind of cool is, and I do this a lot, I find myself, I've typed a whole paragraph in all caps. Well, you can go up here and just say, I want it to be in sentence case, and it'll change it for you. So that's kind of a cool thing. We didn't talk about it, but you can change the size of the font with the big arrow and the little arrow, or you can go up here if you know what size you want it to be. This changes it one increment at a time. Up here, you can do 4.5. You can have not a comma, it's a period. You can have partial numbers if you type it in the box, in the font size box, you can have 4.5. If you just use these arrows, it just does even ones. So whatever's whatever's on this list, whatever the next number is on this drop down list, is what you'll get if you're using the make it bigger or make it smaller options.
Question. I have a question.
Hi, Laura.
I've been trying to copy like a whole chapter and put it somewhere else. And sometimes it will align everything on the right or make it single space instead. What am I doing wrong?
It probably depends on where you're pasting it. If you're pasting it in something that has a different kind of a formatting than where you're copying it from. So what you would want to do is, let's say that you copied this over and you wanted it to be, something different. You can just go back and change it. Like we talked about, you can, you want it to be the justified, you don't want, because if you copy it from one place and it was indented, it'll usually copy it indented to the next one. Then you can go in and manually change your fonts to make them agree. You can change, we didn't talk about how to get into changing, you can change your indents here with the first line of a paragraph. We set the tab up, but you can manually make it this way too. This more gets into style. You change your justification. You can change your line spacing here, single, 1.5, double. I use the multiple a lot, particularly people that want to use a little bit larger font. They've gone to like a 13 or a 14-point font. The multiple means I can set it. So if I set it at 1.2, you'll notice it spread it out just a little bit. It's not as much as 1.5. If I go back to the preset 1.5, see, it spreads it out. So I use the multiple a lot when I don't want to use one of the presets. And that's kind of nice. Or if you do the exact, it'll say, I want it to be exactly 12 points. So you can see, and it scrunches it up really close. So if you do that, if you highlight something, you copy and paste, and it's different from what you pasted it into, you can either go like, I want it to look like this paragraph up here. Well, I can highlight this paragraph, and I can go back to my file tab. No, I'm sorry, my home tab, and click on this little paintbrush over here, and then highlight the new stuff that you don't like the way it looks, and it changes it to the other paragraph. So
But I'm putting it into.
That's a formatting tool. So
Yeah,
if you've got a paragraph that you like, you just highlight it, copy it down there, and you can do it that way too.
But I'm putting it into something that has the same spacing and the same margins, and it changes it on me.
Then you just have to reset it.
Yeah.
That's kind of one of the little bugs about Word is it'll take the text over, but a lot of times you have to manually reset your formatting.
Okay.
And I can't really tell you why. It's just, that's one of Word's little quirks.
I have a
Lorelei,
question.
go ahead.
Okay, back towards the beginning, you were talking about how it can be a problem for editor if you do manual things. So you're saying you shouldn't use the space bar, you should always use indents, is that correct? Does that
Yes.
simplify it enough? Just always go in and use set up indents and don't go space, space, space. You always have the indent.
Yeah, it's really difficult if you can see you've got kind of like a little hourglass looking thing, and it's telling you this little margin thing.
Okay.
It's telling you that these particular lines are indented an inch from the left margin. So if I change these, you'll notice that little hourglass is moving. So if you wanted to make them all 0, and it'll put them all over there. Now, this one didn't go, and you look up here, and the top of the hourglass has now split from the bottom of the hourglass, and you can just drag it back over. But let's say that this is a poem, and you wanted every other line to be, over so far. Well, you can go, this one is left justified. We want this one to be this far over. Then we want this one to be this far over. So you can do it this way. You can either drag, and you'll see, instead of hitting your space bar, and one of the things about using the space bar, when you're using what's called proportional fonts means that the I takes up less space than the M or a B or something like that. Well, if this first one is a different letter than a B, the spacing assumes that it's the same width as the next letter. And so when you're trying to manually, and you think, well, I used the space bar at the same time and they're not lining up. That's why, because you're playing with proportional fonts. When you either set it this way, or you use your indenting up here, or you go back, you can also set your tab key. Then you'll get it exactly the same every time, regardless of what font size or what you're using.
Okay.
So that's why
need to change how I do that then.
Manually.
Yeah. I space.
I've
Repent.
Now you'll see, like, I changed this, to here, and I made these an 8. It changed how much this was indented. So if you can avoid using your space bar for anything except spacing between words, try to use it as little as possible.
Anita, go ahead.
Okay. About having stuff that suddenly appears and you wonder, what in the name of all that is literate and holy has just happened when I copied something or pulled something out and stuck it there? First off, Control Z Control Z, really and truly is our friend.
Oh,
Because,
absolutely.
and if you think about it as where Jenny, for pronunciation's sake, said zebra, I like to think of it as Control Zip, because it will zip everything back to what it just was. The other thing, though, is when you do either a cut and paste or a copy and paste, if you right click with your mouse rather than using the little icons on your ribbon at the top, you'll have a drop-down menu that gives you 3 choices. One will be, and if you hover over the little icons that appear in the drop-down menu, one will be to keep the original formatting. Another one will be to match the formatting. And then the third one is to just keep the text. And yeah, and that third little clipboard I didn't mention because that's for graphic-y stuff.
Like for pictures, yeah.
Yeah, so, but yeah, I'm not mentioning that now.
And you
But
were right, I
anyway,
forgot about that. I seldom use that, but thanks.
but that I find keeps stuff the way you want to go. And what's really helpful, sometimes, Diana, I have found when I am moving things around, originally the document I'm working on was not in the formatting I have turned it into. And lo and behold, in between chapters, I will have a little snippet of that original formatting. So when I do a cut and insert, which think of the V as a little insert there, what it's picking up on is the original formatting for the document.
Exactly.
And so, yeah, you can do, if you're wondering what in heaven's name did I just do, you can do the Control Z and get back to where you just were and start all over again. Or you can use the paintbrush, find something you like the way it looks and use the paintbrush. Or just kind of check and see. You can slowly move down where you're pasting things and keep an eye on the home page or the home tab for what it says your formatting is. How large is your font? What is your font? What is your justification? That kind of stuff will show up. And sometimes it's just a matter of thinking, all right, Dagnabbit, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take that little chunk and I'm just going to delete it with all that weird beginning of the thing formatting. So there's a lot of options, but I would strongly urge you to take advantage of right-clicking with your mouse to get little windows to open up to give you a more detailed option of where you are and what you can do.
Thank you.
One thing we didn't talk about, which is basic mousing 101, is that the left mouse button always performs an action. The right mouse button always opens up a menu. So I highlighted thesaurus and I clicked on right mouse. You'll see I get a whole menu coming up. I go up here and I want to find synonyms. So I left mouse on synonyms and come down and click on whatever it is I'm looking for. Or I want to change the font, those kinds of things. A left mouse button always performs a function. A right mouse button always opens up a menu. Anything else, anybody? You're muted, Lorelai. There you
Yeah,
go.
I just changed that. Okay, Jenny, when's the master class? How do we sign up?
How about we get back to you on that?
There you go. Put me on the list.
Jenny,
And
can
if
I,
anybody ever really wants one-on-one, $20 an hour if you come to my house, because you know me, I'm not real good on going to anybody else's house these days.
Jenny, can I show a real quick trick with Word?
Absolutely.
Okay,
I
so
certainly don't know it all.
you have to stop sharing.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's fine. And then I'm going to share. And this is just something that I have used many, many times. And I use Word 2013. I've got an old version, but it works for me. So I'm screen sharing. Everybody can see my screen. So let's say you're typing, this has, ooh, that's terrible. Been a good day. But let's say I'm doing some editing and I want to edit a person's work and they have sent it to me in Word. You can do editing by selecting text. I can say, you know, good day is kind of overused. It's, you know, not very descriptive. You go to the insert tab and you go to comment. And it lets you type in a comment about that particular word or phrase or whatever it is. You can do a whole paragraph. Now the problem is that after I've typed it in, I'll say come up with a better word. Okay, so then after I get away from it, this is just a really nice way to do editing. If you're working with a partner and you're working with an editing critique group, it just allows you to put your comments here on the side so that people can see what you've written. When you send them back their work, all your comments are there for them to look at and get some feedback from you on. Okay, so that's all I wanted to share. And then
Now,
How do
if
you
you're
undo
using-
that?
If you were using the track changes option, which if I were actually editing this and I thought good is too weak of a word, I would actually highlight good and I would type great and delete good. And if the track changes are on, it will type great in blue font and it will make the good look like red with a strike through. And then I would add the comment to say, this is too weak of an adjective. It needed something stronger, yada, yada, yada. And that's where the track changes come in. If you then go back as my client and you say, it wasn't a great day, it was just a good day, it was the word I wanted to use, you then highlight both great and good, go to the reject in the track changes option. And when you hit the reject button, it takes the great out, puts the good back in straight black text. If you agree with me, you do the same thing, except you do the accept. And that's one of the things we'll go over if I do a master class is how to go through all of those track changes and accept and reject. It's great if you, like I said, if you're doing multiple drafts, it's really, really nice because you can see what you originally wrote.
if you want to take it out, if you've written a comment and later on you realize that it was a bad comment, you right click on it, like Jenny said, you get the menu and you can do delete comment and it takes it out.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Is there an easy way to enlarge that font in that comment box?
No.
No.
We suffer with that, yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's one of the things that's built into Word that they don't let you make any bigger.
No, there is a way to do it,
Yeah.
but you have to go into your settings and it's obscure and it's hard to find. It's a multi-step thing, like 6 or 7 steps to actually get it
Yeah.
to change the size.
And if you make too many changes like that, when you right click, it'll tell you for solutions, it'll tell you just get a Mac and use
Yes,
Oh, Richard, them's fighting words.
but one good thing, at least Macs have now realized that Word is the way to go. So you can now Macs save it to something called Pages, but you can go down to your save as options and you can, which we didn't get into all of the different save as options either. That'll be in the master class too. But Macs now will let you save it in a docx format. Marilyn Ramirez doesn't use Word. I'm not sure what she does use, but she sends me everything in an R RTF format, which is rich text format.
Right.
And I can pull it into Word and change it to a docx. So Word's pretty good about reading, not only reading different formats, but allowing you to save it. I don't think Word lets me save it to Pages, but Pages will bring it in and convert a docx back to Pages. But I don't think Word lets me save it as a Pages option.
No,
I
the other
think
way,
it's
around,
PDF.
you can save a Pages document as Word. And you can open a Word document in Pages, but you can't do the opposite. Yeah.
Right, right. Yeah, I can't open a Pages document in Word.
No,
You have to save it as a docx
Right.
formula in Word, in Pages, and then send it to me. So there's few little tricks and traps like that. But PDFs, for those of you that don't know, is, I forget what it actually stands for. Basically, what it does
Portable.
is, what is it, Richard?
It's portable document format.
It basically turns your text into a picture, so that unless you have actual software that will allow you to edit it, which most people don't, then you can't edit it. It doesn't, Word's really bad with, you've got a lot of formatting in a Word document and you're sending it back and forth. Word's really bad about corrupting it. So I usually send stuff in a PDF, and that way they can see what it's going to look like. You'll notice some of you who have worked with me, I asked you to send me poems in a document format so I could pull them into the anthology, but also in a PDF so I could see exactly where I wanted your lines to break, those kinds of things. So we'll get into that if I teach a master's class.
Janice, what is the pup's
Yeah.
name?
Odin,
What's the pup's
Oh,
name?
Odin, Odin. He's a
He's not big
baby.
enough to be an Odin.
Yes, he is. You haven't heard him bark. He's horrible.
Okay, any
Freddie
other
knows he's
questions
bad.
tonight?
I'm sorry?
I just said any
I
other
said
questions?
Freddie knows he's bad.
Oh,
It-
okay.
Any other questions for Jenny tonight?
I have one more comment. I have used Google Docs for a long time because I didn't have to use Word. So now I have Word, the newer version, and my Google Docs are showing up in Word.
I don't use Google. I hate Google. I avoid Google whenever possible. When people send me stuff in Google Docs, I can never open them, and they always say access denied. I don't use Google Chrome, so somebody else can step in on that one.
Are you saying, Suzanne, that all of the files that you have created in Google Docs are automatically being transferred to your Word?
Yeah, is that something new with Microsoft 365? I don't know.
You may have been saving them automatically to your cloud, to your Microsoft cloud. And then your Word will have access to your Microsoft cloud automatically. I'm
Okay,
guessing that's how this has worked, that this is a cloud thing that's happening with you.
yeah, okay.
Question there, Mike. Would that be, and Jenny too, of course, would that only be if you have the current Word such as 365? If you have the older Word or a Microsoft version,
Yeah.
would that still apply, you think?
Oh, that's a good
I
question.
think 365 is the only one that is automatically linked to the internet. I may
That's
be
what I
wrong,
thought.
but I think so. The other installed programs are, because you don't have to have your internet to use them or to use all of the features. So I'm gonna guess no, that it's only with 365, but I don't know that for a fact.
That's what I thought. Thank you.
But
Yeah.
I do know, like, when I go back to my Word 2010, I don't have the option to do an auto save to my cloud. So that's why I'm guessing that it's not the older version.
Mike, I have you beat. I have 2007 and I love it.
Oh, nice. I have 213 and I love it too.
Yeah.
I have 10.
Are they
And I
still
would
being
suggest
supported?
for those of you who have any kind of an unstable internet and productivity is imperative in your work, that you have a pre-installed older version of Word, because like I didn't have internet Friday and Saturday for whatever reason, and had I not had my Word at my 2010 installed on my computer, I'd have been out of luck for 2 days. Because I mean, you can get into Word 365 without the internet, but you can't use the editing feature. You can't use the auto save to the cloud. You don't have access to their like headers and footers and the formatting that I need to do, those kinds of things. I could do basic typing, but I couldn't use a lot of their additional features without the internet. So until they get all the bugs worked out of the internet and 365, I will always have a pre-installed version of Word on my computer.
Yeah, I tried the 365 for a while and it wanted to supersede the 07, and it would take some of the documents and change it over, update them, which was okay, but I didn't want that. So I finally cut it loose. It stopped
And
it.
depending on how old your Word is, the older versions of Word, the file extension was DOC. The newer ones were DOCX. Now, the newer versions would read the older DOC files, but the older Word wouldn't read the new DOCX file. So if you have a really old version of Word and you're using both, let's say you've got like a 2003, which I think was DOC, you can save down if you're using 365. One of your options when you get into save as is it'll give you like Word 97 and 2003. There's different levels that you can save it to. So you can read down to older versions, but the older versions don't always read up. So there's a saving issue sometimes if you're playing with two different versions and they're widely new and old. You do have to be aware of that.
Okay, folks, I think we owe Jenny a round of applause for this tonight. This was very helpful.
And yes,
this,
Mira, if you want to, I know you said in your little box, one-on-one, just send me an email and we can set something up when I'm really buried in work. So it may be a couple of weeks, but I'm more than happy to set something up. Like I said, if you've got just a single question and it's only going to take me 10 or 15 minutes to answer it, send me an email. I'm more than happy to send you back a quick answer one way or another. And I never charge for that kind of stuff. But if I'm going to spend an hour or two, then yeah, kind of sort of I'd like to be paid. I get this really bad habit of putting food on the table and paying my bills.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I always, when I'm doing my newsletters, I always run into some strange things. I never know how to fix it. But anyway.
right.
And there are so many other programs out there that you can use. And I started using, I actually started using WordPerfect way back in the day in the early 80s when it first came out, transitioned to Word, but I know it inside and out. And everybody says, well, why don't you learn InDesign? Why don't you learn? I don't have time. So I just make Word do what I need it to do.
Yeah.
Another good one,
helpful.
another good one for your newsletter would be Publisher. Publisher has some nice templates for newsletters also.
I do have Publisher, so thank you for reminding me.
Yeah.
I don't
Give it a-
remember half the things I had. Yeah.
Yeah.
And don't forget, I'm glad to answer questions, but the easiest and quickest way is just to go out to your internet and ask, how do I
Yeah.
do this? How do I do that?
Good.
Can I do this?
Mhm.
And there's some really
And-
good YouTube videos that actually show you how to do them. It's nice. And you can stop them and rewind them and go back and watch them again. Very helpful.
And there's actually a support center and they go into your laptop by remote and they can change them. I have the phone number, I think, but anyway.
Oh,
They can give you advice over the phone, but it's hard to get a hold of them, but once you do, they're very helpful.
Just make sure it's, the actual, Microsoft support desk, and I know you're all aware, but be very, very careful about who you let into your computer.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Add people on the internet?
Pardon?
I said, are you suggesting there may be bad people on the internet?
You think that might be possible?
Maybe,
Now,
maybe.
there's a thought.
Never crossed my mind.
All right, folks, I'm gonna call it. Thank you so much for being with us. This has been a really helpful session. I learned a lot. I'm gonna go back and watch the video again. Because there were things here that I
Oh, there's a
haven't
video?
considered doing. There will be a video on the
Thank
YouTube channel.
everybody. Yeah, everybody that talked and those who didn't. I really appreciate everybody giving me their time tonight.
Yeah, thank you again, Jenny. We really
Thank
appreciate it.
Looking
Thanks,
forward to
Jenny.
the master class.
Okay.
Good night,
Everyone.
everybody.
Bye.